basically I'm after the facts of the case or the truth in the matter, not just what one side wants it to be or the other side wants it to be. A lot of times I try not to actually think about too much who I'm working for as much as just focus on the inspection of the vehicle.
Today, I'm thrilled to have Gary McMinoway as our special guest. I mean, one of the first things you've got to do as a lawyer that represents victims of semi-tractor trailer wrecks is you got to put a team together. And one of the first and one of the more critical people that you put on your team is a mechanic who understands big semis, big trucks, commercial motor vehicles. And Gary is one of those guys. Gary has been doing this for quite some time and is somebody that both sides, both plaintiffs and defendants, know they can trust to give them an honest opinion. This is After the Crash. I'm attorney Dave Craig, managing partner and one of the founders of the law firm of Craig, Kelley Faultless. I've represented people who have been seriously injured or who have had a family member killed in a semi or other big truck wreck for over 30 years. Following the wreck, their lives are chaos. Often they don't even know enough about the process to ask the right questions. It is my goal to empower you by providing you with the information you need to protect yourself and your family. In each and every episode, I will interview top experts and professionals that are involved in truck wreck cases. This is After the Crash. Gary, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, why don't you start off, just tell us a little bit about yourself. How was it? How did you become a mechanic, and how did you learn to work on big rigs?
Well, started out as a kid, actually. My dad had a repair shop in Memphis, Indiana, a little town in southern Indiana. And I would follow him down to the shop and get in his way and bother him. But eventually I got to where I could do some stuff. So he'd, teach me to do little things to start off with, and, lawnmowers, and then went to cars and trucks and farm equipment and all the other stuff. And then worked for him for several years. Actually had my own motorcycle repair shop for a while. My brother found out that there was quite a bit more money in heavy duty truck repair. And he bought a business over in Louisville, Kentucky. And then he talked me into going over there and running the shop for him. And that's when I started doing a lot of heavy duty repair. And then he and his wife sort of had some disagreements. He sold the business. I went to a place called AC Brake Company, and they were a brake specialty company. And that's where I got a lot of formal training from the manufacturers, Bendix, Midland, Meritor, Euclid, on brake systems, suspension systems, wheel attaching parts, that type of thing. And that's when I started doing inspections on vehicles that had been in accidents, about 1990.
Okay.
So did that for several years. That business got purchased by Republic Diesel. I ran the shop for them after they bought it. And then when they sold their business, that's when my business partner, William Doty, and me decided to start our company we have now called Maximum Fleet Service. That was in 2014.
That's down in Clarksville, right?
That's in Clarksville, Indiana, yes.
And you mentioned slightly previously that you did some forensic work, what we call forensic work, which means you do some inspections of after a wreck. I know you've been on both sides of cases that I've seen. So talk a little bit about how it is that you got into that, and why is it important for you to do both sides, both plaintiffs and, plaintiffs means you represent, or you go out and do the inspection for the lawyers who represent the victims, the people who are injured or who've lost a family member in a wreck, but you also on occasion work for the trucking companies or the insurance carrier or their lawyers. And I always like working with experts who do both. Why is that important to you to do both sides?
Well, I feel like that basically I'm after the facts of the case or the truth in the matter, not just what one side wants it to be or the other side wants it to be. A lot of times I try not to actually think about too much who I'm working for as much as just focus on the inspection of the vehicle. Started out at AC Brake, we did a lot of work on fire trucks, the city of Louisville fire trucks, all the surrounding community fire trucks. One place was Harrods Creek Fire Department, and there was a guy who worked there called Phil Shadd. I don't know if you've ever worked with him or not.
Sure.
And probably figured you had. He's the guy that I first started working with. There was a milk truck that was involved in a wreck, a fatality, several fatalities, and Phil was inspecting that and hired me to help him inspect the brake system on that one. That was the first one that I did.
Well, and again, this podcast is really geared towards just average folks, that not lawyers, but people who may find themselves, involved in one of these cases. And what I have found, and someone hired me just the other day, and they don't even know what questions they ask. They have no idea. I mean, the first thing they always want to know from me is, why did this happen? Why did this wreck happen? Why did I lose a family member because this semi-tractor trailer did this, or this big gravel truck did that, or a dump truck, or whatever it is? And that's always the first question in their mind, because they don't know, they don't understand, because they just found out. Okay, they get a phone call and they get told this terrible news, and that's always the first thing. And I don't think necessarily they know what's involved in trying to find out what happened. That's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to do, because there could be all kinds of factors. And I know that one of the first things we do is we want to try to preserve evidence. And I think, maybe you could talk about why is it important for us to move and hire people like you quickly?
Yeah, it's definitely a big factor, because when vehicles sit around, things happen. Even if you're not using a vehicle, parts can go bad, things will rust up, things can change. So it's very, very critical that we get to them as soon as we can. Unfortunately, a lot of times that's not the case. I've done inspections on trucks that were in wrecks a year before or 2 years before. It makes it very difficult to figure out what's going on. But we just have to do a little more inspecting and more thorough testing. And, it's like you say, there's a lot of different factors that can go into it. Brakes are always a big factor, because it seems like a lot of people that are involved in a wreck, the real common statement I hear a lot is, well, I pushed the brake pedal and nothing happened. I wasn't slowing down at all. But I'm sure you've talked to a lot of people that have said that or heard that. And you probably also heard them say that, it was only a few seconds, but it felt like several minutes. We do downloads on the computers on vehicles, and it shows the brakes were applied for 8 seconds, and the people swear that it was, several minutes that they were trying to stop and couldn't stop.
And I think that, from our perspective, what happens is that, the trucking industry, they have a need to get their equipment, if it's possible, back in service. And they want to do it quickly, and I can understand that. On the other hand, sometimes they're mangled, and then they want to, in that case, they typically want to get them out of storage as soon as they can, because they're incurring expenses. And so there's a desire to move equipment. I got hired on a case out in Kansas, a semi-tractor case, and I was hired relatively quickly by the family. Somebody had referred them to me. By the time I got out, they had taken them over to Denver Hospital. And by the time I flew into Denver, that tractor trailer, I was within a week. That tractor trailer was 3 states away, and it was before I could get a restraining order to stop it. And by that time, my mechanic out there looked at it and could tell that there had been some fresh work done on the brakes underneath the tractor trailer. But and I've had cases here in Indiana where snow and ice case, and the tractor trailers moved to Texas within 2 weeks. So, if it makes it harder for the mechanics and my experts to do their job if they're not hired quickly. The sooner I can get you to the equipment, the better off we are, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's and that's one of the worst things about taking time. Like I say, the company wants to get that vehicle back, and Sometimes they want to get it back in service, and then sometimes they want to get some repairs done before it gets inspected too. So
absolutely. I've seen that. I've absolutely seen that. Well, sometimes people ask me, some clients ask me, well, do we actually need to go out and have an inspection done of a tractor trailer or semi if the state police have done an inspection? Because a lot of big cases, especially in fatalities, no matter what state you're in, oftentimes the state police will be involved and they'll have a DOT inspection done. Or sometimes they'll be on a county road and maybe the local police will take a look at the equipment. What do you think? I mean, just because the police do an inspection, is there still the possibility that a person or a family may want to have a mechanic look at the same equipment?
Well, my dad used to have a saying, said that two heads were better than one, even if one was a donkey's head. He never did tell me which one I was, but we have done inspections on trucks that have been inspected by the police, and everything on their form is exactly what we wind up finding, so sometimes it makes absolutely no difference. Then again, we've had other cases where there are just one or two things they're missing. They've written down the wrong size brake chamber, for instance, and the bigger the brake chamber, the longer the stroke. Well, if they write down a bigger brake chamber than what's actually on it, the stroke is actually out of service, but they wrote it down as being in service because they had it listed as a smaller chamber. I had that happen one time. Over in Kentucky one time, I think the officer must have inspected a totally different truck than what we were inspecting, because there was no measurement, no brake that we looked at. And this is myself and a couple other inspectors in there also, and nothing matched up with any of the measurements that the officer at the scene had taken. So,
and I've seen cases where sometimes I think that, I mean, it's human nature. I mean, sometimes these wrecks are horrific and there's a lot involved. And sometimes if a semi runs a red light, for example, and there's a lot of police or there's a lot of witnesses, sometimes I've seen in certain states, certain inspectors maybe kind of do a lackadaisical. I mean, they kind of think, well, the semi ran a red light, this is a clear-cut case. And so they're a little bit more laxed on that inspection because they don't necessarily think it matters. But it might matter, right? I mean, so I think, I know as a lawyer who's hired by the families, I would rather have it checked, because the worst case scenario is you can look at it and say, yeah, the police got it right. But occasionally you'll tell me or tell us that, no, the police didn't get it right for whatever reason.
Right. They missed this or missed that. And like you said, it's, sometimes they're doing their inspection right after the accident. It might be nighttime, it might be raining. There's, like say, ambulances, fire trucks, all kinds of stuff going on out there. I'm sure that makes it more difficult to get everything exactly right than, a calm day in a parking lot or something like that when all that's over with.
And we had one here recently. I won't mention the name of the client, obviously, but we had one recently where the state police did a level 1 inspection of a tractor, and we had you look at it, and you found things that were different than what they found. And so I think you found something wrong with the brakes, and they missed that.
Yeah, we found that it had a severe air leak on one of the brakes, and bad part of it was an air leak on a system where all 4 of the biggest brakes on the truck were tied together. So that basically made all 4 of those brakes ineffective. And the driver had complained that, he got to the end, hit the brakes and it wouldn't stop. And although that most of the time we find is not correct, and in this case, it was correct. So.
Well, I think, so people who, have one of these horrible things happen to them, it's important for them to understand that they need to get a team. And that team usually has a mechanic. We'll have an accident reconstructionist We'll have investigators and teams go out and look and preserve the evidence at the scene, the skid marks, the yaw marks, all that type of things. But certainly the mechanic is the key part. And I think sometimes people think that, we want a certain determination. We want to find something wrong with the truck, but it's just as important for me to know if there's nothing wrong with the truck. And sometimes I assume that you go out and you look at trucks and tractors and trailers and you don't find anything wrong with them.
Oh, that's been the case a lot of times. It's when me and the other people that work with me always double check things and sometimes triple check things just to make sure that we're not missing something there. But yeah, many of the cases, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the vehicle. Sometimes it's a driver on a cell phone, sometimes just distracted, sometimes falling asleep. Had one time the driver actually had a heart attack. They found out later on after examination and stuff, and there was nothing wrong with his vehicle, but had a heart attack, fell back, and foot was on the accelerator, and just took off from there. So, yeah,
I've got a case out in Iowa where it's, we don't know why, a vehicle crosses through the median, and we have every year I get hired by folks that are killed or hurt seriously in construction zones where semis plow into the back of them. Mm-hmm. And so, you're like, well, you have to try to, in order to find out what happened, you have to start eliminating things. You have to start looking at, okay, what are the possibilities here? And one of the first things I want to know is there something mechanically wrong with the truck? Because if there is, then that will give me guidance of which way we go. But if there isn't, then suddenly the cell phone downloads are more important and some other things we want to look at. And so, it doesn't matter to me, I, like you, I just want to know what the truth is. And then my job is to figure out how does that fit the puzzle? How does that help me solve this puzzle on why this semi, I have one down in Bowling Green, Kentucky right now, where a semi plows in the back in 3 vehicles and kills 6 people. And there's the mechanic looked at that one, so there's nothing wrong with the semi tractor or trailer. So that gives us something to start with.
Yeah.
And that's what your job is. I mean, you kind of like a forensic, you're out there looking, trying to figure out an explanation on why something happens.
Exactly. And like I say, a lot of times it is a puzzle because you have a lot of different factors, and it's good to look at vehicles on both sides. A lot of times it's both tractor trailers or both straight trucks or tractor trailer dump truck or versus car or whatever, motorcycle or whatever. And I've done inspections on all of those, passenger cars, pickup trucks, motorcycles, even a motor scooter in one case got hit by a dump truck up around Fort Wayne. And we did an inspection on that to try to find out, what happened to this thing? Why was he, doing what he was doing? And, was it a problem with the machine or with the rider or what,
And I think, that's a good point is that, I preserve my client's vehicle. So, we make sure it's taken from wherever it's, taken from the scene. And then we try to get inspections done wherever it's taken of the, with the defense. We have them come out with our experts as well, because you want them to look at our car, and the other side's going to want to look at your vehicle. And then I preserve it and keep it just in case there's questions down the road. The mechanic says, I want to go back and look at this or look at that, or maybe there's a product defect. And so I think that both sides have a duty to keep their equipment so they can be inspected.
Yeah, it's I wish it was a lot easier to impound or keep that equipment. I did a couple inspections last week, and then one of them in Lebanon, Tennessee, the company had taken the trailer, even though they weren't supposed to be able to, and then had one in Bowling Green, and they had taken the tractor. We had the trailer, but had no tractor. So that makes it pretty tough to do anything with,
Absolutely. Well, over the years, let's talk about some of the common issues that maybe you have found in a semi-tractor trailer or dump truck or big truck, big vehicle. What are kind of some of the things that you look at and have found over the years to be problems?
Well, like we've been talking, the brakes are a big factor. Also, the steering system. If you can't steer it, it can get you in some very bad predicaments. The suspension, you can have difficulty controlling the vehicle. Wear the tires, where that makes it even more difficult. Tires themselves are very critical in wet weather, especially, tires that don't have good deep tread grooves in water or snow. If you don't have traction, you can't stop, you can't steer. Makes it very, very difficult. We've had several cases where lighting is an issue, where a tractor trailer is stopping. Had one where he was sitting in a stoplight in a heavy fog, and he had lights on, had brake lights on, but they were all covered up with dirt and road grime, and in a heavy fog, no way to really see it. It was so blocked. And also had one where a tractor trailer was turning, and the trailer is supposed to have conspicuity tape down the sides, and this one had tape, but it was an old trailer and it was worn and very dirty again, and you couldn't really see the light reflecting off of it. So that car came along and didn't see it, even though it had the marker lights and things were working, but they were so far apart, I guess the driver didn't realize what was going on, wasn't expecting it to be across the road, so that's a case where just that conspicuity tape could probably have prevented an accident right there. I brought a piece of that with me too. I was going to show you in case people don't know what that is. See if I can get it up here. It's red and silver tape, and it's very reflective, and there are areas on tractors, trailers, and straight trucks where this is supposed to be applied. And of course, it's not a cheap product. It's anywhere from $1, $2 a foot, and people don't like to replace it real often, but there are some times when even just that could have prevented an accident,
And I think that's another. We had a case up northern Indiana, where that had tape like that, and obviously the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, they require that the tape be on the side of the vehicle, and in certain way. And but like you said, if it gets dirty, or if it's an old tractor trailer, or this one happened to haul ash, and so that was really dirty, and so that ash would cover it, and if they didn't clean the trailer, then you couldn't see the tape. So the tape,
Exactly.
it made no good. Just because you have that tape on there, if you can't see it, it doesn't do you any good. And so, but in that case, it was real important too. It was a nighttime. It was early morning. It was still dark, not nighttime, but it was early morning. And someone was backing their trailer into a facility, and my client didn't see it and hit the trailer. And so in that kind of case, you have to go back out and reconstruct it and run out to see how far the headlights go. And boy, it was amazing to me to see, you couldn't see that trailer without that tape. But if you had clean tape, you could see it from some distance.
That stuff is very good. Yeah, it really reflects light very well. And another thing on the newer vehicles, last 10 years or so, most of them are coming out with LED lighting. And that is way better than our old incandescent lights. They last longer, they're brighter, they don't even use as much electricity as the old ones did. And there again, those are great, but if they get covered up with dirt, mud, ash, or whatever, they're not doing you any good.
Yep.
It's a maintenance thing.
Yeah. Well, brakes, I think, you said brakes are one of the common things that we look for, and there's a lot more complicated. A tractor trailer, the brake system is a lot more complicated than my car or my SUV. Tell us a little bit about what's involved with the brakes, and how does one go about inspecting those?
Well, one of the critical factors on air brakes, tractor trailers and large straight trucks use an air brake system. And it's a very safe system if everything is working right. And it's even very safe if there's only one or two defects in it. It can still work very well. But one of the critical factors is what we call the brake chambers, which is where the air goes, and the chamber can release the parking brake of the vehicle, and it can apply the service brake of the vehicle. And the critical thing that we have there is what we call the applied stroke. And the reason we look at that is any brake chamber has a rod coming out of it and diaphragms inside that push that rod out to apply the brake. That diaphragm can only push that rod a certain distance. And after that distance, it starts losing power and eventually can't push it anymore at all. And I brought one with me here. I'll see if I can hold it up and get a position here where you can see it a little bit. This is the brake chamber. The part to my right is the parking brake section, and then the other section here right in front of me is the service brake section, and you can see the rod coming out of it here. That's hooked to the slack adjuster or brake adjuster, as we call it. And if the brakes get worn out, get out of adjustment, something like that, this rod can only push this slack adjuster so far. After it reaches its limit, then you're not getting any stopping action out of the brake. So what we do is a lot of times we have to repair the air system because there's damage from the accident, something like that, get it to where we can get air to all the chambers. We release this parking brake by putting air to it. Then we put air to we measure, first of all, at that point with the brake released. Then we put air to the service chamber, measured at that point, and that tells us our applied stroke. That way we can tell whether that brake was in adjustment or not. And if the other factors, the brake shoes, the brake drum are in good condition, it doesn't have a seal leaking where the brake shoes are all coated down with oil, and your stroke is within specs, then you should have good braking action out of that wheel brake. Of course, like I say, a lot of times we find out some part of the brake system is worn out, the slack adjuster isn't set up properly, or it's broken and doesn't adjust. These are automatic adjusters nowadays for the last 25 years or so we've had. So there's a lot of different factors that can cause this brake to get out of adjustment, and then it can't actually apply and stop the vehicle. Other than that, as long as you have brake shoes, you have a drum that's not broken or worn completely out, this is in adjustment. It's really a fail-safe type of system, because even if it quits pumping air, the compressor breaks or the brake hose blows off or whatever, in absence of air, this parking brake assembly will apply the brake and stop the vehicle automatically. So that's the big safety factor on it. You know, like now on your car, you use brake fluid to apply the brakes and stop the car on that. If you run out of brake fluid, you have absolutely no brakes when you push your brake pedal. Hopefully you have a good emergency brake at that point, because it's a mechanical brake, usually worked by cables, that applies the brakes on the rear. And you can slow it down with that. Doesn't stop it real quickly, but it will slow it down well. But that's why they use the air brake system on heavy duty vehicles, because it's a much safer system actually than a hydraulic brake system.
And I think that so one of the first things, one of the things we do after a wreck is, first of all, you secure the vehicle. So you get either a court order or an agreement between the parties that nothing's going to be changed or altered, and it's not going to be moved until all the people get out there. And so then someone like yourself goes out, and usually there's somebody from both sides. Mm-hmm. They do these inspections of the brakes and check these, just like what you just talked about, together. I think sometimes folks don't understand that, but really you have experts, and sometimes you guys have worked together lots of times.
Oh yeah.
And so you'll go in and look at this. How long does it typically take you all to go check the brakes on both the tractor and the trailer?
Usually 3 hours will cover it. Usually 2 on the tractor, about an hour on the trailer. And that gives you enough time to inspect all the brakes for the condition and the air hoses to make sure we don't have leaking air hoses or worn air hoses. And look at the tread depth, make sure the tires are good. And then we, of course, sometimes, like I was saying earlier, the vehicle, I've had them where they've caught fire. They've burned all the air hoses off of it. So we have to go to each chamber on the truck and hook air to the emergency side and the service side and work the brakes that way. Of course, now the steer axles don't have the parking brake, so we just have a smaller chamber, just a service chamber there. But with no air system, you still have to hook directly up to the chamber, and that can take as much as a couple hours more to do that. Had one last week where we were trying to do that and a fitting broke off in the chamber and we had to remove the fitting from the chamber. So, it can get a little more complicated when you have situations like that.
And it depends on how you guys have been out. I've been out at truck inspections and watch you guys work in horrible weather, cold, freezing cold, heat, really hot weather. And so I would assume the weather also can be a factor. You don't always get to do this inside.
Oh yeah. It's all different conditions. I always have a rain poncho if it's light rain. I have a heavy rain suit if it's heavy rain, insulated boots if it's cold. One thing you can't do too much about is like we had one in Paducah here a few weeks ago, and it's like 97 degrees, bright sunshine. That was just hot.
Well, one of the other things we talked about is the fifth wheel. And you have the kingpins, and I've had a few cases over the years where the trailer has actually become detached from the tractor. So a trailer, I had one up northern Indiana, where a guy was pulling out of a truck facility after dropping his load. He was then pulling out, and as he made the turn, his trailer became disconnected. Maybe you can tell these folks a little bit about what a fifth wheel is, and how that system works, and what's involved in inspecting that.
The fifth wheel and kingpin type of coupler is a very good system. It allows the tractor to turn and also to go uphill, downhill, and the trailer, the fifth wheel can rock back and forth that way, and it's mounted in hard rubber bushing, so it can take irregularities on the road. It can shift back and forth and works very well. And it is a double latch system on the fifth wheel. So the trailer has the kingpin on it, which is a big metal rod, basically, with a groove cut in it, sticking down out of the trailer. And when that big rod goes into the fifth wheel, it grabs a hold of it, and there's one bar slides in behind it to lock it in place. And then there's another bar slides in behind that to lock that bar in place. So when you have one that fails, like you were talking about, it has had a lot of use in most cases, probably not very good maintenance, and has just outlived its usefulness. The parts are just worn out and can no longer lock each other in place. And I've also seen sometimes the kingpin on the trailer, which above that rod that goes into the fifth wheel, there's a large plate about the size of a dinner plate, a metal plate. And that is welded onto a big cross member in the trailer in order for that to be attached to the trailer frame and be a very solid connection. But after years of banging back and forth, up and down over the road, those can actually crack. That plate can break, and I've seen that kingpin plate actually pull loose from the trailer. And there again, that's something that actually should be caught at the DOT inspection, and that's something that we were wanting to talk about too. Every year, every commercial vehicle is supposed to have a complete inspection done of all the safety items. And DOT requires it. The trucking companies have to keep records of, when it was done and what was repaired. And they have a form that is filled out and everything is checked off on the form. And then you have a sticker that's put on the vehicle to show when that was done. And there's a card from the form that's supposed to be kept in the vehicle so that if the sticker gets damaged or something, you've always got that card inside the vehicle showing when it was done.
And I think it's important. Because because trucks, you got 40 tons of steel out there. When they're in wrecks, people die or get seriously injured. And so the federal government has said, we're going to take extra precaution. If you're involved in interstate commerce, we want to regulate this industry. And we want to make sure these trucks and trailers are safe. Mm-hmm. And so we want to have these DOT inspections so that we can catch bad fifth wheels. For example, you were talking about a fifth wheel. Exactly. If they're being inspected, you're going to catch those things. And so that's what we're talking about, folks, is that the government requires these vehicles to be inspected so that the road trucks are safe that are on the roadway. So kind of why, and you do these DOT inspections, don't you?
Oh, yes, we do them every day. Not a day goes by we won't be doing a DOT inspection on somebody's truck in our shop. And there are also manuals that the government puts out that have the specifications for everything that you're supposed to check and what it's supposed to be, what condition it's supposed to be in. And then they put a little cheat sheet basically on the back of the DOT form that also has a brief description of everything on it. And I was just looking here today. Brakes is the first category on the form when you fill it out here. And also on the criteria section, the first entire column is criteria for brakes. The second entire column is criteria for brakes and ABS. And then part of the third column is criteria for brakes. So that's why they think it's such an important thing. They've got a lot of different things you have to check on the brake system. And then, of course, the coupling devices is second. Some of these are put in basically so everything fits on the form too. They have exhaust system is next, then a fuel system, whether or not it's got any leaks, lighting devices, safe loading so that the cargo doesn't come off of the vehicle, and then steering mechanism, suspension, the frame itself. I've seen trucks that we've done inspections on that the frames were rusted so bad you could stick your hand through the frame rail, they're just too old and need to be replaced or seriously repaired. And then, of course, tires, wheels and rims, windshield wipers, even the seats on buses is something that's supposed to be checked, when you're doing a DOT inspection on a bus. And then they leave a section at the bottom of that just says other, because they know you can't get everything on that form that you could possibly run into when you're doing an inspection on a truck. So they leave you an area there just to write in whatever else you find that might be bad.
And how long does it take you all to do one of these DOT inspections?
A tractor inspection, just the inspection, doing no repairs whatsoever, just looking it over. To do a decent job is about an hour. Doing the trailer is usually a little less, half hour to 45 minutes. And like I say, though, that is just for the inspection. And you almost always find something, even a truck that's 1 or 2 years old, you'll find something, a light that's out, a hose that's rubbing somewhere, something like that, something that didn't get greased from the factory and it's bound up a little bit or something, so it's, you always run into more time doing some repairs on them after you do the inspection, And then
if you find something wrong with it, they're supposed to have that fixed or repaired, right?
Yeah, it's Of course, that's the owner's option. Sometimes they have their own shops. They like to do repairs themselves, or just a friend of theirs that does repair. If it's a little, guy's just got one or two trucks. Most of the time we do the DOT repairs there. And it's sort of interesting. We have little fleets, like I say, guys that just have one truck or two trucks. We have larger fleets that might have 50 or 60 trucks. And you tell these people, well, this doesn't pass the DOT regulations, and we cannot put your sticker on there and pass it, unless we repair it. Well, we can't repair that right now. We've got a couple weeks left on our sticker. We'll go and get it fixed here the next time it stops, And at that point, there's nothing I can do about it. If they aren't going to pay us for fixing it, I can't fix it free. So we just have to write it up that it's defective, let the thing go. If they have an issue with it, we've got documentation to cover ourselves that we told the customer what was wrong. We generally try to email or text customers in that situation. That way we have proof of what we've done. So we have to cover ourselves. Most people go ahead and let us fix any type of safety violation. They might not want to fix the radio or something like that, fix the seat. But if it's brakes, kingpins, lights, something like that, it's most people will have us fix it at that time.
Well, and that's a good point too, is that, there's all different sizes of trucking companies, and the majority of trucking companies are relatively small, and there's the big ones, but the rules aren't different. The truck has to still be safe. It still has to pass the same inspection, whether you have one truck or whether you have 5,000 trucks, right?
That's true. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And of course, the big fleets all have their own maintenance facilities and stuff. If they have something break down out on the road, while some smaller shop might have to work on it, or a local dealer or something. And they know that they have to comply with all of the regulations. So they do a pretty good job of keeping up with it. Now, on the other hand, they are all dollar driven, and they try to get every bit of use out of every component they can, whether it's the tires, the brakes, whatever. So, they have inspections set up at intervals so that it usually comes out that everything, the brakes are wore out at the third inspection, or the tires are wore out at the fourth inspection. They try to time it that way, but sometimes different drivers drive different ways and things wear out sooner. And sometimes you find issues with the big companies the same as you do the small ones.
Well, all the years you've been doing it, have you ever found a truck or a trailer that wasn't inspected timely, that's passed the inspection?
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's, I know of smaller fleets, mostly on straight trucks, but sometimes they have some tractor trailers, and something breaks on the truck, they'll send it in and, want us to repair the clutches out of it, or the wheel bearing's bad. But it's got some other issues. Maybe the ABS light's on. And that's a requirement that the ABS system has to work. And they won't let us fix that. And we tell them, we cannot put a sticker on it. You're driving in violation. If you get caught in a wreck, or in a regular inspection, you're going to be in trouble. There are millions and millions of trucks on the road. One time I was, the Kentucky State Police let me go out to a stop on I-64 out at past Simpsonville. And I was talking to them out there, and it seemed like it was, now some of them are the same vehicles, but there was something like 2 million trucks that travel east to west through Kentucky every year. They've got 60 enforcement agents out there. There's no way they can stop every truck or even a majority of the trucks. So unfortunately, there are a lot of unsafe vehicles out there on the road. I have actually, in a couple of cases where a vehicle I felt was too unsafe, called the police and let them know which way that truck was going and what it looked like and what the numbers were on it, because it wasn't safe to be on the road. Yeah.
No.
We never get those customers back in the shop after I do that, but I don't care.
Yeah. Well, they're not the ones you want, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I mean, people look at the DOT form when we put it up on the screen. I mean, there's a lot to just the brake system. I mean, you have a whole bunch of things that you're checking. I mean, and the exhaust, I mean, there's just so many, the steering mechanism, there's, you know, A through J, and there's so much stuff that's involved in looking at these trucks and keeping these trucks running, you know, and you said, I mean, trucking companies are in business to make money. And so, you know, they're going to, you know, they're going to spend as little money as they possibly can, but yet still hopefully have a safe truck.
Mhm.
And
most of the fleets do very good at that, actually, you know,
Yeah.
the major fleets.
But unfortunately, you and I both seen those trucks that are out there that, you know, that aren't in good shape and that have not been maintained. And, you know, you wonder how long they've been running, like in the condition they've been running. It's a miracle that they haven't caused a wreck or broke down before they had.
It is. Yeah, there's some of them. It's very, very scary. And when I was teaching my sons to drive, and when my wife and I first got together, something that I always told them is, you know, give all these vehicles respect and clearance. You know, don't drive right beside them. Don't drive right in front of them. For God's sake, don't cut them off short. You know, it takes a long time for them to stop. Sometimes it takes a while for them just to react. You know, if you have to run faster to get away from them in traffic, run faster and get away from them. You know, don't drive right behind them, because if they have to stop, a lot of times they can stop quicker than you can. So, you know.
Well, and that's assuming the equipment's in good shape. I drive and I assume that they're not in great shape because of what I do for a living. And so I keep my distance, you know, and when I'm in a construction zone, I'm watching, you know, I'm looking at how am I going to get out of this area? Is there an out for me in case the equipment behind me doesn't stop or doesn't, you know, slow down or whatever. And so I think, you know, I think it's good advice is that no matter, you just have respect, you know, on the road. I know I get semi drivers comment all the time on my blogs and on my videos and on my podcasts that, you know, you got to ride with us for a while because people cut them off and people don't respect them and they don't give them sufficient space. And so, I mean, we all have to do that. You have to take care because I represent truck drivers who get hit by other truck drivers. And, you know, the majority of truck drivers, in my opinion, are good people who care very much about safety. Unfortunately, there's a small percentage out there that don't,
Yes.
that put profits ahead of safety. And those are the ones you have to watch out for. And when those cause wrecks, you have to hire people like yourself to figure out why, what went wrong. So do you enjoy the forensic part of it?
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's very interesting. As a matter of fact, before too long, I'm probably going to be retiring from my regular company, but I'm going to continue doing the forensic part of it because it's very interesting. I enjoy the people that I do it with, and I just think it's something needs to be done also.
Well, I know I enjoy working with you, and either side. I think again, a lot of people don't understand that experts, you know, the good experts, I think, work on both sides. And the other thing people don't realize is they get along typically. I mean, very rarely am I at an inspection where the people don't know each other or they don't trust each other. You know, they usually get along, they work together on, you know, and share information.
Absolutely. Yeah, most of us know that, you know, if you do write something down that's incorrect, you're not going to be able to get away with it for long. But one of the others is going to catch it. Yeah. And if you get that reputation for, you know, writing down the wrong thing, you're probably not going to be doing it very much because that doesn't work out well in the end for anybody.
Right. And I think the same way with lawyers. I mean, I see lawyers trying to make a case that's not there is no case. You know,
Mhm.
I've hired experts and spent thousands of dollars to find out that I did not have a case. And I had to tell the family, you know, look, after we did the downloads of the car, we did the downloads of the truck, we checked the truck, we did this, did that. We investigated, we talked to witnesses. It turns out that it was the car driver's fault. And I would rather, I mean, and the families, they want to know the truth. I mean, they're not wanting me to build a case. They're wanting to know the truth. And so I would much rather find that out in the very beginning and be able to go back and tell the family, I'm sorry, there's nothing here we can do to help you. And at least give them some closure than to try to make a case out of nothing.
Yeah, it's a shame, but like you say, there are some mechanics and some lawyers, and some of the lawyers hire mechanics that they know will do that. And,
Well, and the truth, though, ultimately wins itself out. And so, you know, I believe that at least, and I'm always, you know, looking for the truth and what happened. And I think, you know, for people who are listening too, that it's very important that you pick a lawyer who understands semi-tractor trailer cases, who understands the law behind it because it is different, understands the equipment, and more importantly, knows who to hire. Not the hired gun, but hire the people who have credentials who can give you a truthful answer. Is there anything else, you know, Gary, that you think of that you think that we want to cover that we haven't talked about yet?
one thing I might mention too, while we're here, as I said earlier, I've also done inspections on cars, trucks, motorcycles, and scooters. I'm a motorcycle rider, have been since I was a kid, and I would like to throw in a little bit about motorcycle safety too. I know there are a lot of motorcycle riders that ride too fast. They zigzag in and out of traffic, and sometimes they cause their own issues that way, own problems that way. But would like to request that people who drive cars, drive trucks, whatever, keep an eye out for motorcycles. They're very small. They're not a threat to you. I think a lot of times people see a motorcycle coming, they see it, but it doesn't present a threat to their vehicle because they're inside of a car or a truck or whatever. And, you know, they might go ahead and pull out of an intersection or stop short or whatever. And, you know, like I say, it's something that we really need a lot of people to pay more attention to.
And I think that, you know, again, it's like the semi drivers. I mean, the majority of people who ride motorcycles are good, safe drivers.
Mhm.
You have a handful that kind of make it bad for everybody, but the majority are good, safe drivers. The one thing that I see and that I would comment and add to that is that distracted driving is deadly. And so when you're looking at your cell phone, even for a second, or you're looking at a computer, or you're fixing your hair, or you're reading a book, or whatever it is you're doing, you take your eyes off the road for a second and people can die. And motorcycles are really vulnerable because if you take your eyes off this road and you're doing 30 miles an hour in a city, and you take your eye and you hit somebody, you know, hopefully people aren't going to die in that wreck. But if you take your eyes off the second and you're going 30 miles an hour and you hit a motorcycle, somebody could die, or they could lose a leg, or they could be seriously injured.
Yes.
And so distracted driving, it's so frustrating to me because every year I'm just getting more and more cases. I get more distracted driving cases than I do alcohol involved cases, ones that involve alcohol. We had two folks on a motorcycle who both lost a leg because of a distracted driver. They were parked along the side of the road.
Oh, wow.
They got hit. And so it's just, you know, people, we actually just this weekend, Lawrence had a community safety event, and I have distracted driving machines that I take out to the community, and I have kids drive them because they see their parents using their cell phones. And I have them go through this course and say, okay, you try to get through this course. Have your mom sit here and try to get through this course, because they think they can do it because they've done it and not wrecked. Well, they've been fortunate because nobody slowed in front of them, or nobody stopped in front of them, or nobody
Right.
walked in front of them. That's the only reason they've been successful. And so we put them in a simulation machine where you can see that something will walk in front of them or stop in front of them, and they don't make it through the whole course. Nobody does. And I just wish that more people understood that for motorcycle drivers, for car drivers, and semi-driver, I mean, everybody, nobody should be distracted in driving.
It's a full-time job just watching the traffic, watching the road conditions, and keeping your vehicle under control. And like I say, when you're doing all this other stuff that we see people doing, it's just not safe.
Yeah.
And I've had several crashes, and a lot of the trucking companies now, of course, have in-cab cameras that view not only outside in front of the truck, but inside the cab. So here's a driver going down the road. He knows there's a camera in there focused on him. He's still holding his phone up here, watching a video while he's driving the truck down the road.
Yep.
And then it shows the truck gradually drifting off. So he's concentrating on the phone, not concentrating on where he's going. He drifts over and hits the guardrail, then yanks it back and runs into somebody else.
Yep.
And all from being distracted.
Yeah. I've seen drivers, we had a fatality where a driver was driving a flatbed, and he was using his phone just solely as a GPS. He was trying to figure out where he was going. Mm-hmm. And my client was stopped at a red light, and he's looking at his phone, and he killed my client. I've had ones where a guy was actually looking at porn, and while he's driving a semi-tractor trailer, and it's just that it amazes me, and it's just, there's no excuse for a car driver, or a somebody driving a truck to take their eyes off the road and not be paying attention, because unfortunately people die. So
there's just too much traffic anymore. When I was a kid and learning how to drive, there was so much less traffic around this area, around where I live in southern Indiana down here. It's just a totally different situation now. I remember in 79, I took a trip out to California, and the roads out there were, of course, expressways just clogged with traffic even back then. And it was, totally different. You had to it was a full-time job just avoiding accidents in traffic, Yeah. And it's, every year, we get more drivers on the road, more vehicles on the road, and it gets more and more dangerous to be driving and not paying attention to what you're doing.
Yep. Well, Gary, thank you very much again for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
This is David Craig, and you've been listening to After the Crash. If you'd like more information about me or my law firm, please go to our website, ckflaw.com. Or if you'd like to talk to me, you can call 1-800-ASK-DAVID. If you would like a guide on what to do after a truck wreck, then pick up my book, Semi-Truck Wreck, A Guide for Victims and Their Families, which is available on Amazon, or you can download it for free on our website, ckflaw.com.